Okay, now let's dig deeper perhaps into some of the factors that we saw impacted inflation in the year 2022. You've talked about insecurity, you brushed a bit about food, but I really want us to look at energy costs. Energy, both power and perhaps fuel. Do you think that it really filtered practically into every other item, into every other consumable by Nigerians in our lives? You will see, for instance, fuel, petrol price selling at 250 naira, 300 naira in some places, in many places in Nigeria. So do you think that Nigerians are already, that cost is already filtering into every other item that we consume? And we saw a bit of that high inflation in the 20% band when the fuel crisis, of course, we're still having fuel queues around October, November, December. Tajuddin, I hope you're understanding where my head is with this question.
I get what your questions and also comments are, and I think one way to also consider some of these factors is to try to run through the year 2022 from an event standpoint. In the first quarter of the year, that was when we had global energy prices rising substantially, partly because we had that issue or the war between Russia and Ukraine. And in the second quarter, the impact of that, development, became more intense in the sense that, it now began to impact, food prices because we have, some food items, or let me say some raw materials that are used to produce good, food in this country, imported from, the region where, Russia and Ukraine are located. So you will see the impact also, being attributable to that in terms of, food and commodity prices and energy prices locally here, became a big problem when diesel prices, somewhat, over more than doubled, on a year-to-year, basis. We also now had the impact of, insufficient supply of, petroleum, premium motor spirit, which we naturally call, petrol. So we also had that, hitting us as a country in 2022. One key element also that we must not leave untouched is foreign currency. At the BDC segment of the market, or let me say at the parallel market, we had, significant devaluation of the Nigerian naira. So all these factors were largely speaking responsible for the, high inflation rates that we saw in the first three quarters. And towards the end of the year, the last quarter of the year, we had a flood event. So that flood, was a negative factor for food harvest. As we speak, we have some food items, that have seen their prices doubling over the past, 12 months. We have seen some of them where prices have increased by 50%, some by 20%, and so on. So if you take an average, what's this inflation number? For instance, the food inflation is telling us is that we had average of 23% increase in food prices in this country in the month of December 2022. So